So you have to make sure you know what the slappers are doing and pitch accordingly to them. Remember, pitchers control the game. So when you watch the College World Series, see what they're trying to do. Are they throwing a ton outside? Did they bring in another defender? Are they trying to get her to pull it to the first baseman? Is there a runner on second? And what are they doing? Because they're pitching to where they want the slapper to hit the ball. Jamie Southern here. Welcome to the Weekly Dose. We are going to be talking about how to get slappers out as well as bunters in bunt situations. So I know you guys are watching a ton of softball on TV, and I really want you guys to take this opportunity to be able to learn, not just watch the game, but learn from the pitchers, learn from the situations. So every team has at least one or two slappers. So when we talk about slappers, what are they trying to do? We know that they have speed, and they're trying to put the ball on the ground so they can force the defense to have to field it quickly and make a hard throw, and they're trying to beat it out. They're trying to force the defense to make an error, and they are most likely trying to hit it to the left side of the field. So we have to take into consideration what they are trying to do and how we can beat them. We know what you're trying to do, and we're going to try to keep you from doing that. So, different options. I know at the younger generation, so the 10-year-olds, the 12-year-olds, even the 14s, a lot of pitchers just throw the slappers outside. They are trying to throw them outside, I think, because a lot of slappers at the younger ages start to pull off of the plate and run towards first base before they really make contact with the ball. They're trying to get to first before they even hit it. And so as pitchers, we're trying to really make sure that they can swing and miss at that outside because they're not staying on the plate. You have to remember though, if you find slappers who are not doing that, then probably jamming them is a good idea, because they are on the plate. So we have to use our situations, and we have to notice and pay attention to what the slappers are doing. If your coaches are calling pitches, that's a great time for you to come in to say, hey, she stays so tight on this plate, I think we can go inside, even with just a fastball. Do you know that when I was in college, I had a really good curveball, but with a slapper, sometimes just placing a fastball on the river or right on the corner is exactly what you need, and they freeze and they get called strike three. You get them reaching on a couple outside, get a foul ball, and then you come and jam them. You don't have to always throw breaking pitches to them, especially when you're coming in on the inside. It's going to really be already a jam for them. So like to throw, if you do have a curveball and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, what if it hits them? It's okay. Fastballs are okay if you know how to place them and where to place them. So think about that. I want you to watch the slappers, and this is my homework for you with the slappers, and we'll kind of go into it a little bit more. But when you're watching the College World Series, and I want you to within the first inning, I want you to identify what the pitcher's strengths are. What are the top 3 pitches that this pitcher is throwing? So when you know what those are, it might be rise ball, changeup, and a curveball or something. I want you to see how they use it to the slappers. What do they throw on the outside part of the plate? Sometimes there are slappers who are just trying to touch it in the infield. UCLA has a slapper like that. If you watch the UCLA and Texas game, you notice that Texas brought in their right fielder and they had 5 infielders. So they had a third baseman and almost like 2 shortstops, and then they had their second baseman and first baseman. And they threw her outside. She knew what she was getting. There's 3 infielders on the left side of the field, and they just wanted her to touch the ball. She's just trying to touch the ball. Okay, we'll touch the ball. We're going to get you out. Notice what they're pitching and what their goal is, okay? Then sometimes you have slappers who are trying to power slap. Now, if you have a pitcher that throws a ton of rise balls, let's see if they throw a lot of rise balls. If she's a power slapper, she's trying to hit it for power. That means she could power slap a home run. I've seen slappers do that. So they may not throw a ton of rise balls. So I want you to know what your strengths are, and you have to figure out what this slapper is trying to do, and then you gotta beat her at it. A lot of slappers want to hit that ball to the shortstop because it's a longer, they have more time to get to first base. It's a longer grounder. At the same time, she has to make that throw. So if you can throw her inside and she doesn't fully know how to kind of like keep her hands inside, she's probably going to slap it to the second baseman, and that's an easy play. That's a short throw. You're going to get her out. Okay, so I get that sometimes slappers pull off and start to run to first base, but not everybody does. So you have to make sure you know what the slappers are doing and pitch accordingly to them. Remember, pitchers control the game. So when you watch the College World Series, see what they're trying to do. Are they throwing a ton outside? Did they bring in another defender? Are they trying to get her to pull it to the first baseman? Is there a runner on second? And what are they doing? Because they're pitching to where they want the slapper to hit the ball. So try to figure that out, okay? You can still throw rise balls to slappers, because think about this. If a slapper's trying to hit the ball on the ground because she wants to beat it out, why wouldn't you want her to try to pop it up? Because a pop-up is so easy to catch versus her hitting it on the ball, you fielding it cleanly, having to make a hurried throw, and seeing if you can beat her. So think about all of that, and don't just pitch the same way to every slapper. Okay. And I forgot to mention the changeup for slappers. Let's talk about that. Slappers, some of them have happy feet, man. They are running out of that box. A changeup would work for sure. But remember, they're just trying to tap it and touch it. So if they're not really super fast out of the box, then a changeup is kind of, they want something soft so they can beat it out. So I would be very selective on when I would throw a changeup to a slapper, and I would almost try, if I did, I would throw it inside to them. So if they are getting caught, maybe they'll wrap it and pull it to the second baseman or the first baseman, and then you can get them out. But if you're throwing it outside, all they have to do is just touch it. It's almost like a swinging bunt, because they're not going to try to hit a changeup harder. They're just going to try to touch it, if that makes sense. So be selective with it. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but know where to maybe place it if you have control with it. But know what they're trying to do. They're just trying to touch it soft and go. So the harder your pitch is, they have to then decide and figure out how they're going to slap it down or all that information. But when you give them that time to think, they kind of get more back control and they place that ball where they want to. So we have to experiment, and we have to communicate with our coaches in between innings to say, I think this is what she's trying to do. I think she's just trying to touch it over here. So let's not give her those pitches. I also wanted to talk about bunt situations. So these are situations where we're pretty much 75% sure they're gonna bunt. So what are we throwing to these bunters to make it hard for them? Some of the time, let me tell you this, if it's a 3-4 hitter and they are bunting and we know they have to get it, I'm like, thank you, just let them bunt the ball. Because what could happen? You could get them 2 strikes, yeah, and then they're swinging away after 2 strikes. So is it easier to just let them give you an easy out and be done with that great batter than trying to get her to foul some bunts off and then to go at her? Now, if it's a different type of batter that you're like, I know I can beat her, then you've got to make it hard. You've got to make it so they can't bunt, and then you have 0-2 on them usually. So the younger pitchers, that's 12 and under, sometimes 14, we're throwing lots of rise balls. Okay, I get it. Try to pop them up. It's hard for them to kind of stay on top of the ball to make sure that they get it down. But at some ages, they start to get smarter and they're like, I'm looking down. I'm not going to even go for this rise ball. So in college, sometimes when I knew it was a bunt situation, I would throw almost like a high fastball, location-wise, down the middle, but I would spin the ball like a rise ball. So I really wasn't trying to make it rise a ton because I knew then she wouldn't go for it. So I needed to make it more engaging and tempting, but I still wanted that spin in hopes that their bat was flat, that I could pop them up. So sometimes that you would have to know that. You know they're gonna bunt and you're gonna try to pop them up, and so make it like not a super rise ball like you at the location where you know they're gonna be swinging, but you're gonna make it a little bit more tempting, kind of more waist height or like little tummy, not armpit height, but a little bit more, so they're like, ooh, this looks fat, and then they go for it. But at the college level, you're gonna find that in a bunt situation, they will still throw rise balls, for sure. But what would be the hardest if you were batting and you were bunting? If we think about bunters, we think about they don't always bunt with their legs. So a lower pitch, they kind of just reach with their arms, and they don't go down with their body like they should. And so sometimes the lower pitchers drop balls or curve balls where they have to kind of reach away with their arms will get you a foul ball, will get you a strike. Sometimes a drop inside is so hard to bunt because it's like it's inside. So you would think, well, but that's where their eyes are, but it's that low, and so they just drop their hands. So think about what is hard for you when you're bunting and utilize that information to then say, oh, it's not always a rise ball. It's not always a rise ball. Now, we don't really want to throw changeups for a bunt situation because it's just too easy for them. Sometimes it does help the defense be able to like start really running in if they truly are bunting. So depending on the speed on the bases, you may want to do that to be able to give your defense a head start to kind of start crashing, because they'll get in 2-3 extra steps to grab that ball. So that's an option, but that's going to be easier to bunt. Different things that we've used this year is our third baseman was very quick. So we wanted, sometimes in certain counts, we're like, oh my gosh, just hit it to her. So you may have a defensive player on your team that is like, you want them to get the ball, then you have to control the game and pitch it so they hit the ball to them most likely. Think about that. If your team struggles with grounders and makes a ton of errors or throwing errors, you may want to try to pop them up more. You know? So think about what you're doing, but I want you to watch the College World Series, and I want you to find the pitcher's 3 top pitches and figure out what that slapper is truly trying to do. Is she trying to bounce it so high? Is she trying to just poke it past the infield? Is she trying to just touch it? Almost like a bunt, but just like a soft touch. And then see how they are being strategic. And trust me, these teams have scouted and watched tons of videos on these batters. So they are trying to control them and to control the game. So think about and see if you see any tendencies of like, okay, this is what they did to her last time. This is what they did. We know growing up, speed beats us. It does. You get one person on base, they steal both bases. I mean, you're like, dang, speed is hard. It's hard. So we have to be able to be smarter at that 12 and under, 14 and under, even 16 before our defense kind of picks up and we're like quicker, we can get to the ball, throw it harder, making good throws. We have to find a way. So you have to be able to communicate with your coaches in between innings so that second time, third time through the lineup they come up, you're not getting beat by them. It's an easy out. So sometimes you're like, just take the out. Like, thank you for giving us an out. She moves to second, most likely. And now you get to go at the other batters. But you have to get those outs. You got to make it hard. Imagine for a batter, they go 0-2 because they try to bunt and they look at the first one, they foul the second one, and then they have to hit away. They haven't even seen a real pitch yet, like batting wise. So you kind of have that advantage over them. But we've got to beat the small game. We've got to beat that short game and don't let them beat you on little touches of the ball. You might find that it's really hard to strike out slappers. I knew like in college, I didn't get a ton of strikeouts off of slappers because they're just trying to touch the ball. And I threw more screwballs, curveballs than rise balls, drop balls. And so you'll see that the pitchers that have rise balls, drop balls, they're going to be able to be more successful with the slappers because they're getting them to swing and miss more versus them just trying to touch the ball. And they're not taking full swings. So they have an advantage is like, I just have to touch this ball. and then I'm gonna let my speed try to beat them. So really kind of start to take patterns into your games to say, okay, I'm not getting any swings and misses on this pitch, or gosh, I'm getting tons of foul balls with my screwball. Great. But then how can you go for the strikeout? That's my homework for you, is to really pay attention during World Series games as well as your games. And yeah, let us know. Let us know if you have any other questions, because it's a different type of batter. Slappers are different. Bunt situations is different. And we don't really practice those a ton in game, especially if you don't throw live. You might get a bunt situation once or twice a game, maybe not even any. So it's not something we get a ton of practice on. So we got to make sure that when we do, we know what we're trying to get that batter to do. I want them to touch this ball. Just be done. Bunt this, fastball, boom. Thank you, we got the out. Or am I trying to go at them and try to make it unsuccessful for them? So I encourage you, pay attention, get better. And then we will have a workout of the week that goes with the slappers and the bunt situations. I'll see you guys next week.